Comply or you're next. That's what today's headline reads. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi threatens to send National Guard to Seattle. What does our wimpy, weak, feckless governor, what's his response? Let's get into it. Here we go. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi, who last week identified Washington and Seattle as sanctuary jurisdictions that impede federal immigration enforcement, threatened to deploy the National Guard. It's also threatened to deploy to Portland, but I think Portland kind of cleaned up its act, right? The mayor just basically bent the knee and said, whatever, we can't lose any more federal funding. And that's what this will all come down to. Whether Washington State, in a budget deficit, $9.2 billion more in taxes, wants to find out what happens when you F around with the federal government. Hey, let's see how this goes. It's only going to go one way, right? Oh, we're going to sue you. Washington State's already sued the Trump administration, I think 36 times this year. I mean, it's just, what are you doing? Whatever. We're going to send in law enforcement just like we did during the LA riots. God, I hope so. I'd love to see that in Seattle. Let's clean things up. We've got some hideous crime going on here. President Trump, we need the National Guard. Bring them in. No questions asked. It's from a real estate appraiser and managing broker, podcaster. Bring them in. Bring the feds in. Love to see it. Just like we're doing here in Washington, D.C. You better comply or you're next, Bondi said. Did I read correctly in an Instagram story that Trump was going to go out with the police tonight on a little run through D.C.? Can you imagine? Oh, Washington Governor Bob Ferguson pushed back against Bondi's commands. Our leadership here in Washington State is so bad. It is so horrifically bad. It's mind-boggling. The things they come up with, the things that they support. Washington State will not be bullied or intimidated by threats and legally baseless accusations. Legally baseless accusations. Federal law trumps state law. It just does. Bob, work that out. Ferguson said at a press conference Tuesday, our state passed a bipartisan law. Nobody cares. Federal law, state law. Our state passed a bipartisan law that appropriately and lawfully limits the diversion of state and local resources to federal immigration enforcement. Why are you protecting criminal illegals? Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? What's the point there? The optics on this are horrific, aren't they? They're just horrific. The American people look in and see that and they're like, what in the F are you doing? Why would you do that? Even people in like cities like Chicago, they're like, why are we spending millions and millions and millions of dollars on the criminal illegals when we've got constituents that have lived here their whole lives that are getting the big fat zero? They're not getting anything. They're getting Zippo. Yet because of this virtue signaling on the sanctuary city deal, whole sanctuary city deal is based on a premise that, people who are here not legally won't go to the police and report criminal activity. And that is simply, from a statistical standpoint, not true. So this whole sanctuary city, sanctuary state, sanctuary whatever thing is just a bunch of nonsense. And it's not like they're coming in and they are taking entire families out that, are doing nothing. That's not what's going on, and everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. He added that Bondi's proclamation would not sway his decision. Of course not. He's got a virtue signal. He's got to lay down the law, which gets subverted to actual federal law. But hey, who's watching? Pam Bondi seems to believe that cavalierly citing criminal statutes, well, that's kind of what the laws are. That's what indicates the laws. Bob, you went to law school. I didn't. And personally threatening me. All right, because you're a moron. A democratically elected governor, of a very blue state that has policy that is just, no, will result in compromising the values of my state. You mean supporting the criminal illegals that are here? That supporting the values of our state? Those aren't my values. Those aren't my values. No, I support getting rid of the criminal illegals. I support it. I do. I support getting rid of criminals, period. Bring them in. Bring in whoever you need to. That is not going to happen, Ferguson said. It is when your funding gets threatened. That's what will happen. You will bend the knee, you will bend over, and you will take it. Like a man. Oh! Bondi sends Ferguson letter regarding immigration laws. Bondi sent Ferguson a letter on August 13th in which she told him to repeal laws that she said obstruct federal efforts. In the letter posted by Ferguson on X, she cited a Trump administration executive order that could tie federal funding to immigration cooperation. These states are going down these roadways that they're virtue signaling at best. They don't really polarize the community. They don't polarize the constituents because you're doing something that's basically against the law. And so, people are looking at this going, why are we doing this? I mean, even folks that I know, hardcore liberals, they're like, you can't defend it. You cannot defend it. You just can't defend it. The president directed federal agencies to identify and evaluate their statutory authority to issue grants, contracts, and federal funds to determine where immigration-related terms and conditions may be added to combat sanctuary policies that violate federal immigration law, Bondi wrote. Ferguson responded in that X post by saying, Washington state has no intention of changing our values in the face of threats from the Trump administration. So Washington state loves criminals. I mean, that's what you take away from this, right? That's what you take away from this. And look at all the crime stories coming out of Washington state right now. I mean, Seattle is just rife with criminal activity because we allow it. We allow it. And this goes with that. This whole notion that public safety, it's not that big of a deal. Ferguson cites Keep Washington Working Act. Ferguson cited the Keep Washington Working Act of 2019 state law. Nobody cares. Keep Washington Working Act is an important law. No, it's not. Keep Washington Working Act requires our state and local law enforcement to focus on keeping Washingtonians safe. Right. Yes. Correct. It does. And some of that is getting out the criminal illegals. Yeah. Rather than allowing limited resources to be used for federal immigration enforcement. We'll just find out how this works out, right? Ferguson said he plans to issue a more detailed response to Pam Bondi's letter on Tuesday, but he was too busy working up ways to tax the constituents instead. Yeah. How can I get more money out of the people? How about this one from Jason Rance? Washington Governor Bob Ferguson melts down over threats to hold him accountable. Washington Governor Bob Ferguson offered a low-rent performance during a press conference this week, aiming to convince voters that he's a tough guy. He's not. Again, this is Jason Rance from Seattle Red. Washingtonians should see right through the gaslighting. They're too busy virtue signaling. They're too busy hanging out on Pervert Park Beach, just doing crazy, whacked-out things to really get an idea of what our governor is doing, because the way they vote is just, well, is he blue? Boop. Let's vote for him, because what could go wrong? Well, we're seeing what could go wrong. Ferguson knows full well that interfering with federal immigration enforcement is illegal. Federal law, state law. Yet he stood at a podium clutching his pearls over a straightforward letter from U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi. I read the letter. It's pretty basic. Hey, you're violating the law. Get the F in line. Acting as though she threatened to jail him for sport. Well, no, I don't think we should jail him for sport. I think we should jail him for violating federal law, though. I don't know. That seems reasonable. You break the law, accountability. Oh, wait, I'm in Washington state. There's no real accountability. We're not really doing that. So, yeah, it doesn't really play a part. Bondi's letter wasn't complicated. She put sanctuary jurisdictions like Washington on notice. If state officials knowingly obstruct federal immigration enforcement, they could face consequences under federal obstruction, conspiracy, and harboring statutes. Yep. I mean, that's the law. That's reality. That means if Washington's politicians operating under color of law use their official roles to shield criminal illegal immigrants from deportation, they may be subject to criminal charges, as they should be. They've violated the law. Translation, if you break federal law, you don't get a pass just because you have a state badge, just because you're the governor. Ferguson pretends to not understand this. He told reporters the letter was vague without any explanation whatsoever. This gets funny, right? This gets funny here. That's laughable. One Google search of yada yada, U.S. Code and the U.S. Constitution article yada yada makes it clear states cannot interfere with the enforcement of federal immigration law. And yet they are, over and over and over again, because that whole virtue signaling thing, they really feel like they're going to get some political clout out of this. I don't know. I'm not seeing that happen. Refusing to honor detainer requests, hiding information from federal authorities, and instructing local law enforcement not to cooperate, all of which happen under Washington's dubiously titled Sanctuary Law, Keep Washington Working Act. What a bunch of nonsense. It's just babble. Just babble. He knows this because he's a lawyer. He just hopes you don't know it. I think most people can see through this. People who don't want to see through this, it's because Orange Man bad and Trump derangement syndrome, and anything federal at this point is Trump derangement syndrome and Orange Man bad. So it can't possibly be something that, runs under the auspices of actual law. Ferguson is upset that laws apply to him. The real act came when Ferguson declared that he was breathtakingly shocked that Bondi would dare cite statues carrying prison penalties. Law consequences for breaking said law. It's not that hard, right? He cast himself and state officials as victims of some Trumpist authoritarian scheme, as if merely reminding him that laws exist amounted to fascism. That's what we're seeing, aren't we? I mean, this is the playbook. This is the playbook in action. What I think is super interesting is that these big blue cities, these big blue governmental entities, they are continuously reacting. They have zero proactive ability because they're just being put on their heels all the time. And they're in these defensive positions just one time after another, because Trump is actually doing stuff. Whereas Joe Biden, what did that guy do? I mean, besides not follow the law. You know what I mean? Just, let's bring in 20 million people. We'll see how it goes. Shenanigans for days. Let's skip down here a little bit. Ferguson built his brand suing Trump for everything from immigration policies to regulatory changes. Now he claims that it's authoritarian for the federal government to enforce federal law against him. The double standard is as cynical as it is obvious. A lot of this just comes down to straight politics, doesn't it? And Bob Ferguson's, he's got to stand up there and say something to kind of push back a little bit. But we know how weak these folks are. They're just weak. Bob Ferguson is no Greg Abbott. Let's go there. Bob Ferguson is no Greg Abbott. What happened when Greg Abbott stood up against the federal government? Razor wire down the middle of the Rio, basically clawing back the U.S. border. Meanwhile, Joe Biden's giving it away, everything in his power to let millions and millions and millions of criminal illegals to come in. I mean, that's what happened. That's what's happening. And now Bob Ferguson, no Greg Abbott, tries to protect violent criminals. Let's be clear, when Ferguson is defending, when he shields Washington's sanctuary policies, he isn't protecting hardworking legal immigrants. He's protecting criminal illegal immigrants. Yeah. I mean, straight up. These are individuals in the country unlawfully who then commit additional crimes, assaults, DUIs, drug trafficking, rapes, and worse. Not all of them, but enough of them. And it doesn't really matter if it's all of them or none of them. If they're here illegally, that's a crime. They are criminal illegals. Bondi's warning is about preventing local politicians from obstructing federal agents trying to remove those offenders. Ferguson wants to conflate them with law-abiding immigrants. See, Ferguson is trying to say, they're going after the law-abiding immigrants. Well, yeah, but they came into the country illegally, so that makes them criminal illegals. Out they go. As if ICE agents are just randomly rounding up families for speaking another language at the park. It's dishonest, and he knows it. And everybody in Washington state knows it. I mean, it's not that hard to figure out. You don't even really have to talk to people to know that others know it. It's just, what side of the political aisle are you on? Which one do you believe? The supremacy clause isn't optional. Federal law trumps state law. Period. Every law student knows this. Ferguson certainly does, but he's going to go down another road because he is virtue signaling his strength as a Democrat. He's not confused. He's betting the public is, knowing Seattle media will amplify his phony outrage and bad faith complaints. The whole thing, Jason goes on to say, sanctuary status is by definition obstruction. Absolutely. I mean, what I'm going to talk about now is when we talk about knowing Seattle media will amplify his phony outrage. The Seattle Times has become one of objectively the most biased major city newspaper out there. I read the headlines every single day at my local mini mart. I look at the newspaper and go, oh yeah, there's another one. There's another one. Everything is stated in a way that Orange Man bad, Republicans are horrible, evil, awful people, and they should all be hung up and, not allowed to do anything in society. Democrats are saving grace. If you're not a Democrat, what are you even doing? And you know what? People in Washington state, they live in this bubble. They live in this absolute bubble that they've created with their own vote. And they think that this is all just normal nonsense. They don't get it. And then they're shocked when stores get robbed. They're like, I don't understand why my grocery store is closing down now. We've literally got that in Everett, in Kent, in Redmond. We've got Kroger's, we've got QFCs being closed down because of shoplifting, safety issues, and regulatory concerns. Yeah, read between the lines there. Yeah, you've got major issues going on. And when a corporation has to close stores down, that's what they're going to do. I mean, you got some absolutely insane crime stories coming out of Seattle right now. Insane, just insanity. And it's because we're soft on crime. We're not really arresting people. We don't have enough police. Washington state has the least police of any state in the United States. Seattle is so far behind, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of police officers below what the FBI recommends on a per 1,000 or per 100,000 population base. We're so far under because people here don't like the police. They think they're fascists. They think they're authoritarian. That's how you get the whole defund the police thing. That's how you get Chop Chaz going. Let them do their thing in a, 6x6 block radius of Seattle. And what could go wrong? And 2 black kids get murdered. Oh, good Lord. Oh, wow. That accelerated quickly. I guess we got to shut that down. I mean, just some ideology that is so warped to end up with one of those that it's not a shocker that we're defending criminal illegals and just straight up criminals in some cases. This is not a shocker. This is just business as usual. Yeah, it's an interesting time to be living in Washington state because I feel like we have seen what happened in California. People have left California to come to Washington. That's where most of our in-state migration has come from over the last 40 years. My career as a real estate guy has been watching Person after person after person moving in from California, purchase and sale contracts. You see where their home address is before they move. California. Yeah, moving up from California. Got too expensive. Taxes are too much. Couldn't handle it anymore. Couldn't handle the homeless. Couldn't handle the crime. So moving to Washington State. But they bring their ideology here. And now we've got the same values here in Washington State. We've got California values, which are progressive. And I got to be honest, there's no progress there. It's not progressive. It's, downward trend. That's what you end up with. All right. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. Love to have you subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff. I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for joining. Bye for now.